Hi everyone, and welcome to Digital Media. I'm Bradford Prairie, and I'm going to be your instructor for this fully online course. And this is a course that's really important because we're going to survey all of the software that is currently used in the graphic design industry. So if you're looking to become a design professional, or you're just looking to pick up some graphic design skills, this is a very foundational course and is going to be the basis for everything that comes next. And let me tell you, understanding the software and being able to use it fluently will really speed up your design process. So let's get started. So what is digital media? Well, technically it's any media that is just encoded in a digital format. So any media that you consume on a computer, including images, videos, sound files, websites, are technically digital media. As designers, this is kind of the paradigm that we're living in. We no longer push around pieces of paper. There are some cases where we work in analog formats, but the majority of the work we do is in digital formats. And the tools we use are digital tools. And that's really what this course is about. It's about those digital tools and how they interact with the media that we're creating. Most of the software we use as designers is part of the Adobe Creative Cloud. The Creative Cloud and Adobe software has been the major player in this space for decades now, and probably will continue to be in the future. Doesn't mean that everything we use is part of Adobe. There are some innovative pieces of software like Sketch that are becoming industry standard, and those pieces of software really keep Adobe on their toes. But the Adobe Creative Cloud is still a must-have for anyone that wants to enter a creative career, and those are the programs that we're going to be learning in this class. The three pieces of software we're going to be focusing on in this class are Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and Adobe InDesign. Adobe Illustrator is all about vector images, Photoshop is about raster images, and Adobe InDesign is for layout. We're going to be talking more about what the difference between vector and raster is coming up. The Creative Cloud contains some other programs that are useful for designers. These include things like After Effects, which is great for motion graphics, and Adobe Premiere, which is great for video editing. Sketch is not part of the Adobe Cloud, but is also a very useful program that has become industry standard for website and app design. We're not going to be covering these programs in this class, but they're good to know about. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between raster and vector images. Raster images are things like photos. And if you've ever zoomed in on a digital photo, you'll notice that it's really just made up of a bunch of squares. The squares have different color values, and when you zoom out enough, it looks like a sharp image. So raster images are really just an approximation of an image, and that's how it's encoded in a digital format. Vector images are a little bit different because they're encoded in a mathematical way. Vector shapes are defined by curves and points, and so it doesn't matter how much you zoom in on them, they're always going to remain sharp. So they're really good for things like logos and typography. Vector images are encoded mathematically through these Bézier curves. Bézier curves are a system of anchors and handles that just tell the computer how to draw a certain curve. So we'll get more into this into the future when we get into the pen tool, but just know that this is the system that causes vector shapes to have their form. So at the end of the day, vector images and raster images look very similar, but they have a distinct set of advantages and disadvantages. Vector images are great because you can zoom in on them and they always stay sharp. Raster images get really blurry and pixelated when you zoom in too far. That being said, there are disadvantages to vectors as well. It's very limiting what you can create with vectors. They really rely on flat, simple shapes. So something like a photo can't really be created with a vector format. There are two main color models that we use in design. RGB color is what we use on screen, and it's called an additive color model because when you add up the three primary colors, red, green, and blue, you get white. CMYK is kind of the opposite. In CMYK, we use the primary colors magenta, yellow, and cyan, and when you add them up, you get black. So it's called a subtractive color model because in order to get white, you actually have to take away color. This is the mode we use for print. And for this mode, there's actually a fourth color, K, which is actually black. And black can be added to any of these colors to create darker shades. So now we're going to jump into the first part of this course, where we're going to use Adobe Illustrator to create vector images. We're going to start by having a look around Adobe Illustrator and getting to know some of the basic functionality. So as you go through those tutorials, make sure to follow along on your own computer and pause whenever necessary so you're picking up all the important information.